Well, good morning, everybody. Just make sure my microphone, yes, my microphone is on. Good morning, everyone. So happy Tuesday, May 7th, 2019. So I don't know if you guys saw, but there's been some stuff going on recently with Facebook, and I thought today would be a good day to talk about it. Oh, my coffee cup got stuck on my little warmer. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about it here on Coffee with Steve. So, probably a lot of you guys heard about the recent goings on with Facebook, how they shut down Alex Jones, which I thought he was already banned. I thought that's what I had assumed. That's what I had heard. So somehow he got banned again. There's a whole slew of people here. Let me see if I can find the list. There was. Did I even put down? I should have put down a list of and noted everybody that was done. But it's oh, here we go. So we had James Woods was banned. We had what's that guy's name? The Paul Jones guy. Anyway, I don't want to get hung up on. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So Paul Nellon, who apparently was a white nationalist, Milo Yiannopoulos, Paul Joseph Watson, Laura Loomer, and then of course there's the Louis Farrakhan was one of them, and of course Alex Jones. And then also James Woods was also banned on Twitter. So it just seems like there's more and more of these bans that are just coming along, and they seem to always be targeting this one side of the aisle, this one group of people. But boy, those people on the left of this discussion, they're just more than welcome to do whatever they want on the platform. Facebook. So Facebook said, we've always banned individuals. Let me move this over here. So we've always banned individuals or organizations that promote or engage in violence and hate, regardless of ideology. The process of evaluating potential violators is extensive and is what led us to our decision to remove these accounts today. Really? Regardless of ideology? So how does Jim Carrey get to still tweet about Bill Barr drowning in vomit? Is that not hate-filled? Is that not ideological? Man, we're really starting to get into this era where the tech giants that control our access, our social access to each other, are starting to become editorialized, right? They get to decide what kind of content goes on their platform. And that's kind of the heart of the question. Is Facebook a publisher or are they a platform? Because if they're a platform, they have the ability to say protected speech, right? They have the ability to say, this is protected speech. People can post whatever they want, and we are not responsible for that. But once they start going into the publisher sphere, then they are responsible and can be sued for what's being posted on their behalf. So it's ironic to me that Facebook is going more and more the way of a publisher. They're trying to become editorialized and try to enact some sort of moral principle on what's being said on the platform. And that basically means that they can then be liable for what is. Right? If they're saying we are going to be held accountable and responsible for what gets posted on here, we're going to make sure that we get rid of all this hate speech. Well, that means that if something goes on their platform, then they can be sued for it because they're responsible. They just claimed responsibility. So this is and actually I got to give credit where credit's due, and I rarely ever read a Vox article and think, wow, this was a pretty decent bit of journalism. But in fact, that's what I'm going to say about this article. This one was posted by Jane Coaston. Let me see if I can let me move this over here and then share my screen. There we go. So this is, I have a nice little highlighter app that I have installed. Just kind of helps to kind of put certain things highlighted that I want to talk about. So the Facebook free speech battle explained. Is Facebook a platform or a publisher? When users are getting banned, it makes a difference. And this is actually very well written. There's a few things in here that are kind of a little bit Vox slantish, if you will, because they are more on the left publication. There's a few of them that are on here that are, I would call extreme leftists, really. They're very, very leftist, almost bordering communist. But in this case, this is a pretty well-written article that really goes through and details some of the things. So Facebook booted a hodgepodge of extremist figures last week. So right there, it's kind of a loaded statement right there, which tells you exactly what Vox's standpoint is. Everybody who is to the right of us is an extremist, right? Who here thinks that if you have a moderate position that is in the middle, right, and maybe just a little bit to the more conservative side of this Vox author, is going to be considered a centrist or normal, I guess, political figure or normal political belief? Are they going to say that they're not an extremist, right? That, oh, they're in the center. No, everybody who is to the right of extreme left is considered an extremist in their eyes because they're so extreme. So they're so extreme that anybody that has a middle position is therefore extreme. It's so bizarre. Anyway, okay. Are they platforms like Amazon Kindle or a cell phone network provider, or are they publishers like Vox, InfoWars, or the Washington Post? Now, I have done some work for a publisher. I contributed to a sports article, a sports website for a while. And it was a sports article, sports website, I should say, that was not managed by any particular publisher, but we held ourselves accountable for what was being published, right? So when we posted something, we had to kind of explicitly, we had certain opinionated articles, but for the most part, we had to have things that were statistic based, right? We had to have facts, we had to have figures backing what we said. And we didn't just let anybody come on there and post whatever they wanted to. There was kind of this process to get on there. You had to be kind of more or less verified as somebody who wasn't going to say something outlandish or extreme. So that's kind of the difference. So if you're just a carrier, if you're just a platform like a Kindle, or they're saying a cell phone network, really, and this is where I go all the way back to the Napster stuff, right? Like, how is Napster, which is a platform, responsible for what its users do on it, right? And Napster lost that battle. Whereas they mentioned down here, MySpace won that battle. So down here, no provider of user or interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. So this is part of an act. This is the Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Okay, so they're basically saying in this section that the anybody who is a content platform, right, who is not a publisher but who is a platform, is not going to be held responsible for what other people publish on that platform. Okay, and this opens up a whole world of other things. Like, okay, when we're talking platform, that's kind of a very broad and generic term. What about WordPress, right? Is WordPress going to be held responsible for somebody who builds a website with their platform? Or is like Blogger, right? Blogger.com back in the day, when, Google has this Blogger platform that was really popular. Are they responsible for everything everybody blogs? That's kind of the question, right? And MySpace at the time, which was, of course, the predecessor to Facebook, was sued, and they won because of this act, because of the way that this reads. They were sued because a teen met with an adult male who sexually assaulted her, and that's a very unfortunate case. But I think that the court found justly that a platform should not be held responsible for the users. Otherwise, once you start making that distinction, there's all sorts of really bad questions. It's a pretty easy slope into some pretty draconian measures that get taken. Anyway, but users complained about extremism and misinformation weaponized. Now, this bugs me. I hate it when they say extremism and misinformation weaponized. What the hell does that even mean? How is misinformation a weapon? I get like there's the Ministry of Information, or the there was like, the Nazis used propaganda, right? There can definitely be propaganda that is used to inflame and incite, right? If that's the case, I would like to see the exact examples. I'd like to know what did any of these people say that could be considered motivating to the masses to cause harm or violence. Where is it? Like, that's the one thing that's the key piece of information that consistently is missing about all of these bans. Where? Give us an example. Because if you can cite an example where this actually happened, you're going to get so many people on board with you. Like, if you can point to this and say, they said that. Like, Alex Jones has probably said enough things. I think I could probably do enough research. I've heard him speak before, and yeah, he's got some really crazy stuff. I wouldn't necessarily know that it would be inciting violence, though. Maybe. It could be construed that. So I'm a little bit more okay with the Alex Jones, because I think that there is I'm sure if you looked through the history, you could probably find an exact citing where he might have said something that would be very, not just this hate-filled, not just expressed as hateful, but actually would be kind of an incitement towards violence. But here, like, they just say this as if it's like common knowledge that, hey, misinformation is being weaponized. Really? Like, okay, show us. Show me. What did they say? What did they do? Anyway, okay, so weaponized on Facebook and elsewhere, putting Facebook, Twitter, and other tech companies under immense pressure to increase moderation. So now they're being, and what this, think about this. Where is the pressure coming from? Just think for a minute. Where is this pressure coming from on these tech companies? Is it coming from the conservative media? See, it's funny because back in like the 80s and 90s, there was a big push for censorship amongst the conservatives and on the right against like rap music and, vulgarity on TV. There was a big push from the conservative side to prevent those things in the public square as far as what was nationally being broadcast, right? Now you have kind of like the exact opposite happening. You have the left basically saying, we can't have misinformation because it doesn't jive with our worldview, right? What is misinformation? Misinformation is anything that doesn't jive with our worldview. That's really kind of it. And that's kind of the heart of the thing, is like anything that we disagree with, that we don't like, well, that's really important that we get rid of that on Facebook. That shouldn't be allowed in the public square. So they're being just as draconian as those in the 80s and 90s were on the right that were saying we need to eliminate all of, rap music and, any vulgarity on TV or on radio. Now that's basically the left saying that, but they're picking a different target, and it's a political one, right? That's the danger here. This is where it's an even bigger danger now than it was back then, because then it was about what kind of music do you listen to? What kind of TV is being allowed to be aired? Now it's, you have an opinion that offends me, you should be banned. You shouldn't be allowed to talk, right? That's the big problem. That is the fundamental right of political speech is being infringed because the left doesn't like what's being said on these platforms. And rather than arguing against those things, rather than saying you're wrong because of this, because I have this fact, You said this, it's incorrect. Here's the facts that support my position. Or here's the facts that undercut what you're saying. Rather than having that discussion in the political sphere where everybody can see that evidence, they're saying, you are an extremist, you are hateful, you should be banned, you shouldn't even be allowed to be talking. That's how they're doing it. Rather than actually having a discussion of ideas, they're using this pressure on companies like Facebook and Twitter, who are full of people who agree with them, to remove all of this content, remove the people who are posting these things that could very well, who even considers this misinformation? Who considers this extremism? How do we get to that point? She already started off with, a hodgepodge of extremist figures. Does anybody think James Woods is an extremist figure? James Woods is an extremist figure, according to her. Seriously, like what? And then later on, actually, she even kind of says James Woods isn't really all that extremist. He's much more conservative. He's much more, a middle of the road. So she kind of contradicts herself a little bit in this article, but still, I do think I'm going to give her some credit. She really does go into some good depth about like the platform versus publisher thing. Okay, so let's see. No provider so here's that act, right? That basically protected Facebook or MySpace, right? Okay, I think that's pretty much all I had on this. I'm going to switch back over to this. So yeah, there's kind of some problems there, right? It seems to be very much a one-way street. Now, what Facebook has decided to do is they've come up with a project that essentially opens up some of the data to research about. They're trying to figure out what is fake news, right? What do they consider fake news? How do they? Let's see. How does this read? This says Facebook agreed to provide anonymized data about how stories are shared across its platform. The first 12 research groups to get access to Facebook's sensitive user behavior data were announced last week. Collectively, they'll be studying critical questions facing politics and technology, how disinformation campaigns play out in social media. Okay? They say the ways partisan communities become organized and whether Facebook as a whole can swing an election. If we can find privacy-preserving ways of sharing data, society would be much better off, says Gary King, a Harvard professor who's helping to oversee the data sharing agreement between Facebook and researchers. It's an incredible resource that just gets untouched. Okay. Now, I'm not going to get into the politics of Mr. Gary King, but I imagine he's from Harvard. You could probably connect some dots there for yourself. But so some of these things, like, so Facebook is making available all this data to different groups. And this is kind of an unprecedented move on Facebook's part because most of the time they just kind of keep this data secret, in their algorithms secret. They don't really talk about how it all works. So having them open up their data to some sort of research facility or to anybody is really kind of remarkable. So they open it up to this one group called Social Science One. And Social Science One has a lot of, shall we say, contributors. There's the Laura and John Arnold Foundation, the Democracy Fund. And by the way, the Democracy Fund was started by eBay creator. What's his name? I got it posted here. Pierre Omidyar. I can never pronounce names. Omidyar. I have to remember, how does his name get pronounced? Anyway, so basically he's the guy that created eBay. He gave $100,000 to an anti-Trump super PAC last time, in the last elections. So that just kind of tells you where that money is coming from for this Social Science One group. Okay. Also, they have to. So if you're going to get access to the Facebook data, you also have to sign this pledge. It's the Fact-Checking Network's Code of Principles. Okay. That's kind of interesting because I wonder what kind of principles those are, and I wonder who came up with them, and I wonder. It's by Poitier, right? Or no, this is not Poitier. It's IFCN. Poitier was the the news article here. Pointer. There we go. So, over the past several months, we've begun building a first-of-its-kind data-sharing infrastructure to provide researchers access to Facebook data in a secure manner that protects people's privacy. How do we know that? How do we know that Facebook is securing the data in a secure manner that protects our privacy? Oh boy, you guys just saw that. Spilled my coffee. Okay, so how do we know that they're even protecting our privacy? Just because they say so? Okay. Being a signatory, so they do have to be a signatory, being a how do you pronounce it? Signatory of the International Fact-Checking Network's Code of Principles. Facebook's partnership with Social Science One, which was originally announced last April, is the company's answer to those transparency concerns. So here we go. They're trying to say we're going to open up rather than us just kind of arbitrarily deciding what's considered fake news. Let's bring on a third party, right? Let's bring on a third party to help us make those decisions, which just happens to be the Social Science One group. And again, what are the politics of those people? Because the politics of those people are what's going to then determine what's fake news. Haha, but Facebook doesn't have to be responsible anymore. All right, so Tessa Lyons, the product manager in charge of Facebook's anti-misinformation efforts, told Pointer that she expected the company's partnership with academics. So, okay, let me just slow down there for a second. Told Pointer that she expected the company's partnership with academics, which functions independently of the company, is funded by a slew of foundations to reveal more about how misinformation spreads. So there you go. Academics. We know what kind of political leanings academics have. We know, right? Especially when it comes to social sciences. Gee, I wonder who's going to be making decisions about what is and is not fake news on Facebook. I wonder what their political leanings are. Let's hand it over to the academics who are all very, very liberal in the social sciences. It's like a convenient way that they can say, well, it's not us that's being draconian towards the right. It's not us at all. No, we're handing it off to these independent researchers, and they're the ones that are deciding this. And conveniently now, it's just upon them. It no longer has. There's no one holding them accountable, right? No one is holding. Who's going to hold the academics accountable for their bias? Who's been holding them accountable to their bias so far? Right? It just isn't happening. So we're just going to get even more and more draconian is what's going to happen, right? There's going to be more. We're going to see a wider array of bannings. I'm positive of it. Okay. So some of these different, so there are several different groups that are going to be trying to look at this information. So Social Science One is kind of like one group of them. But there's also, there's one group that aims to measure why people share fake news stories and how misinformation affects voters in Chile and Germany. But they all plan to use Facebook's data to study the mechanics of misinformation. Now, when I read that, I had an immediate thought that was like, uh-oh. So think about this for a second. They're measuring why people share fake news stories to see how misinformation affects voters in Chile and Germany, but they all plan to use Facebook's data to study the mechanics of misinformation. Now, a lot of people would think, "Oh, well, that's good. We should understand that. We should understand the mechanics of this." But once you understand it, who says that you're going to use it for good? If you understand the mechanics of misinformation, couldn't you use that to your advantage in a political system? How did those dirty rapscallions that just won the election through fake news and misinformation, how did they win? Because we need to do it too, right? It's not just this, oh, well, everything is fluffy rainbows, right? We're all just happy here. No. This is information that anybody could use to their political advantage, to their political gain. I think that's pretty much all I got for today. I hope you guys enjoy this video. It's frustrating for us guys that are like this. Coming from the more conservative side of things, it's annoying to see this happening in the public square. Like, Facebook is not a publisher. They're a platform. We should all have the right to say whatever we want, for crying out loud. If you don't like what somebody says, block them. It's not that hard to do. Why do you deplatform? Why must you kick people off? Why? It's so anti anti-Western world and culture, right? We've become uncivilized. That's what's happening. Is the left has become so adamant about their extremist positions that they are no longer what I would consider American principles or Western philosophical principles. There's no freedom. They don't want freedom. They want tyranny, and they want their tyranny. And that is becoming a serious problem because it's affecting us online. The only solution here that I see, okay, I don't think that we're going to be able to fight Facebook by going on and saying, this is, we've been saying now since the beginning of when this started happening. This has been going on for about the last year and a half now, people getting kicked off or shadow banned or what have you. So we've been having this conversation with Facebook and about Twitter and about Patreon and about all the others, and it hasn't gotten anywhere, right? It's just getting worse and worse and worse. So I don't think that staying on Facebook and trying to argue against the stream is going to fix anything. It's just not. So what we have to do is we have to find somewhere else to go. And that's unfortunate, right? That's really, really unfortunate. But that's the position that Facebook has put themselves in, is we, as a group of people who are identifying more on the conservative side or central, even central, like if you were a classic liberal, much more in the center of today's politics, then you are considered an extreme rightist, right? You're far right, according to the left. And that's sad. So where are you going to go? What's your political sphere? I happen to agree more with the classical liberalism than I do with just about any other political party or philosophy. There's a couple things I have small disagreements with, but that puts me as an extremist. I'm far right because I believe in middle-of-the-road things. I don't think we should be too far this way or too far this way. That somehow makes me extreme. So we got to find other places like, as I hate to say Gab, but, Gab is pretty well an open platform. Unfortunately, a lot of the more extremist rights, the alt-right exists on Gab. And I think the only way to fix that is just to flood it with like people who are not, right? And turn, because it is a free market. Like if you just provide a platform of free speech, the larger majority voice is going to win out. Okay. So find those other platforms. MeWe is another one, kind of an alternative to Facebook that I've been slowly kind of moving more and more towards and doing a bit more stuff on. Although I fully admit it's not as enticing to get to as like Facebook, because Facebook is just like right there, right? And so MeWe's a little bit more of I got to get working towards it. Minds is another one that a lot of people are using. Just find an alternative platform and start using it. That's my message today. Find an alternative, because we've got to get out of this censorship. We've got to find our way away from this censoring that's going on. So I appreciate everybody showing up today and watching the show. Gosh, I got so many serious topics that I'm talking about. I keep saying I got to find something more delightful to discuss. But this is some important stuff that's going on, and we should all be very aware of it, because you may disagree with everybody who's getting kicked off the platform, right? You may disagree with James Woods and Milo. You may disagree with Alex Jones. I know I certainly do. But it should still be a problem for you if you start to realize that who's deciding the rules, Who's deciding who gets kicked off? And what's the criteria? And why can we never find a damn example that shows us what these people did? You just say, we're kicking you off for hate speech. What hate speech? What did they say? When did they incite violence? Give us an example. We'll back you 100% Facebook. We'll back you 100% Twitter. Just show us. What did they do? Nope, not there. Conveniently missing from the information that they provide. Anyway, have a good Tuesday. Okay, everybody, have a good rest of your week. Hope to see you guys here tomorrow again, 7:30, another live broadcast. Or maybe I'll find something a little bit more lighthearted. Maybe I won't. I don't know. I'm kind of on a roll with this stuff. Kent, thank you so much for letting me know you can't miss it, or you had to miss it today. But I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and hope you guys have a wonderful day.